Story 1. Long haul has a new meaning living in New Zealand. With domestic flights, it takes a 40-hour transit to get to Europe. There is a non-stop Emirates flight from Auckland to Dubai that takes 17 hours. Then at least a 4-hour layover, and it is still another 8-hour flight to Paris, Milan, London, or other destinations. It is not fun. Story 2. I generally love international travel. Going through immigration usually is unpleasant, whether due to long lines or rude staff. Hong Kong offers one of the best experiences. You simply scan your passport and proceed. Story 3. It is the constant battle between wanting to be friendly and getting to know locals and not getting scammed. I do not want to be curt, dismissive, or seem rude, but there are some countries where a small percentage of the population are just out to fleece you. Story 4. The worst part is the commute, not even the travel itself. I like airplanes, and even though they're cramped and sometimes full of strange people, it's still fine. But the commute is terrible. Your flight is at 12 o'clock, so you have to get there by 9 o'clock at the latest, assuming it's a busy airport with an international flight. It's also an hour's drive to the airport, and you have to make sure traffic doesn't hinder you. So you leave home at 7 o'clock. This means waking up by 6 o'clock at the latest to shower, pack toiletries and chargers, get everything sorted, and allow time for the rideshare to arrive. By the time you get into your seat on the flight, you've already been up, moving, and stressing for the last 6 hours. That's a full day's work, and only then does your actual traveling begin. Story 5. I have been to more than 60 countries, and the worst part for me is the travel. Coming from Australia, we are so far from everything that it takes a long time to get to places, and the flights are not cheap either. Other than that, everything is manageable. I have never really been sick while traveling, and my bags have only been lost once. Story 6. Having a mental health episode or being sick in general can be challenging. You want to have a new adventure, meet people, see things, and have a good time. But for some reason, you feel paranoid, depressed, alone, and exhausted. While you know you are doing something you want and love, you also just cannot wait for it to be over, or worse, regret going in the first place. It can make you feel very vulnerable, weak, and out of place, like you do not belong. When you first start traveling, the thrill can keep these feelings at bay. Then, when you get used to it, you catch up with yourself and your depression feels at home wherever you are. Story 7. The flight home and the last night on the cruise ship. The holiday is almost over, and your real life will return. Story 8. I find countries where you have to haggle over the price every single time you buy something so mentally confronting and draining by around day 4. Story 9. Other people on the planes. And the gates too. Why queue before you are called? You are all going to get a seat. Story 10. Airports were enjoyable at first, but now they are very disappointing. I am referring to Dallas-Fort Worth, Atlanta, and Heathrow airports. Additionally, business class has been feeling a bit less comfortable lately, regardless of the airline. Story 11. Gentrification. Many cities and areas you want to travel to cater strongly to tourists, causing the authentic and unique atmosphere to be lost. Barcelona, Prague, Venice, and Lisbon are a few examples. Story 12. Food availability. If you have food in your house, you know what is nearby, their hours, and so on. When you stay at a hotel or hostel, you cannot just make a sandwich because you do not have anything. You might not even have a refrigerator. Thirsty? Maybe the place you are staying sells drinks, maybe not. Is there a gas station, corner store, or grocery store within walking distance? What are their hours? Suppose you have been at museums and similar places for 10 hours, it is 8 p.m., and you are very hungry, but all the local restaurants in this part of town close at 8 p.m. You do not have a car, so you have to walk, take a bus, or train back to the hostel or hotel, then try to find options further away and figure out how to get there. There is no quick or fast food option. That was exactly my experience in both Mexico City and Bogota. I have learned. On day 1, I try to find a grocery store and buy at least a box of cereal so that there is something at my hostel. Story 13. If you are traveling with a passport from a developing country, the nightmare begins before you start your travels and when you initiate your visa process. The process will be long and tedious, requiring lots of paperwork and patience. It feels like a passive-aggressive way of saying you are not really welcome, and if you want to come, we will try to make it very difficult. Story 14. I always get sick after catching something on a plane during a trip from the United States to Asia. Wearing a mask and taking vitamin C for weeks before, and losing a bit of weight do not help. Story 15. I was an international recruiter for 20 years, spending about 150 to 200 days on the road per year. I was mostly in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America. I think the hardest thing for me was the long-distance flights, frequent time zone changes, and poor diet. I would do trips like 12 cities in 5 countries over 20 days, airport, taxi, hotel, meetings, dinner, drinks, repeat. It was fun but took a toll. Story 16. I solo travel. Meeting people can be the best part. It is amazing how much it varies and how it can affect your trip. You win some, you lose some. Story 17. Immigration. Nothing is more soul-destroying than waiting in a line full of people who do not want to be in said line, waiting to see someone who does not want to see you, managed by someone who does not want to manage you. I have traveled a fair amount over the years, and it does not matter if it is waiting in line in Dubai when 6 Airbus A380 airplanes have landed at the same time, or waiting for a ferry to France. It is all miserable. I remember covering 5 countries in 12 hours, and the passport check at Dover was the most annoying part. Although we did annoy some poor Belgian man when we had been driving through France for a few hours and stopped for petrol. We asked a man at the petrol station where in France we were, and he angrily gestured at the French sign and said, "Monsieur, you are in Belgium." This did not do much for Anglo-continental relations. Story 18. It's just tiring, delays, turbulence, passport queues, waiting for luggage, airborne diseases on flights, long days, and those single-serving hotel coffee bags. Looking at you, United States. It doesn't mean it's not worth it, though. We should remember to separate the international travel part from the experience of a city, country, or culture. Story 19. Visited about 25 countries, so I'm not really a globetrotter. Downsides, I remember currencies. At one point, I had 6 different currencies in my wallet. But that was before credit and debit cards became widely accepted. Nowadays, the main issue is the absence of touchless payments and a universal app for phone-based payments. Visa. The process to obtain one and the time it takes. Curfews, or rather the strong advice not to leave the hotel after dark, especially in the United States. Upsides? Plenty. New cultures, new approaches to common problems, and food. Story 20. I have traveled extensively. My passport is from a developing country, which has been very frustrating. Many documents are required for visa interviews, along with numerous difficult questions, even after proving eligibility to travel not only to developed countries but also to other developing countries. These interviews are not free and are generally non-refundable. The treatment in airports can also be frustrating and borderline discriminatory. While not always the case, your passport often influences the level of skepticism from immigration officials. I understand that we are economically disadvantaged. Story 21. I used to travel a lot for work, and while business and first-class travel are very comfortable, there is a reason you get them. Most of the time, it was red-eye flights and early starts in foreign offices or sites with long days. Often, you would not even step into a hotel for 16 to 18 hours after getting off a plane. I never had an issue with customs, local culture, or food. One big exception is that, as an Australian, I found coffee around the world to be terrible. Also, sunscreen overseas is essential, as the sun is much stronger compared to Australia. I only really felt unsafe in the United States because I knew people carried guns. Story 22. Long flights. Being in Australia, tucked away in our little part of the world, means it is a long flight to anywhere. Traveling to Iceland, Tanzania, and Quebec were the longest flights with stopovers I can remember. They took 2 days. Story 23. Returning with the time difference and long layovers on connecting flights leading to 20 hours of discomfort. Story 24. Visa application process. You would not understand it unless you are from a country with a weak passport like mine. It is at best super inconvenient, expensive, and at times downright dehumanizing the way you are asked to prove your worth. Kenyan visa. Chasing that expensive visa and then only searching how to avoid pickpockets and scams in first world countries was surreal. Story 25 1. Being tall in an economy seat for hours, or even worse, being tall with other tall people in neighboring seats for hours. Cancelled flights. Crying children on planes. Story 26. Trying to pack enough to be comfortable but leave room to bring items back. I went to Norway and did not get anything, but my bag was too heavy to fly back. Story 27. Getting food poisoning. Nothing dampens a trip worse than food poisoning. A cold is manageable with medication and just slowing down the itinerary. But food poisoning or a stomach bug puts you on your back. Story 28. Probably when the cheapest flight by a significant margin includes a 30-hour transit in China. That, or if you have the physique of Hank Hill and your tailbone starts to bruise around hour 10. Or when the person next to you tries to small talk and you have to make it clear quickly and politely that no. But the unlimited free drinks guaranteed by the Warsaw Convention definitely help with those last two. Story 29. Not having enough legroom on flights. Immigration. Getting sick. Figuring out cellular service. Getting scammed. Realizing after you are home that you missed something. Experiencing travel withdrawals once you are home. Story 30. Visas. If you are not from the United States or another developed country, you have to apply, wait in lines, and pay large fees before you even leave your own country. Story 31. One time I went to the Dominican Republic, and on our layover, there was a difficult gate agent at the Toronto airport who absolutely refused to let us board our plane. She said it was because our luggage would not be able to come with us, although it was unclear if that was true. Someone else at the gate told us to approach him. He reviewed the file on his computer and said we could board. We informed our gate agent about this new information, but she insisted he was wrong. Regardless, her supervisor had instructed her not to let us on under any circumstances. At the time, we were a group of 10, and 2 members were allowed to board. The surprising part was that we were going to an 8-day all-inclusive resort. The person who paid for the entire group was with us, and the next flight was not for 3 days. The pilots actually turned off the plane to wait for us, or at least that's what we were told. Eventually, we were allowed on the plane. The flight was then delayed by 6 hours, which may have been related to the boarding issues. Our checked bags also arrived with us, all because of that one gate agent. Story 32. The long flights, jet lag, and trying to figure out how to navigate in a new place, including language, culture, locations, and public transit. Story 33. Not having unlimited drinking water readily accessible is challenging. I drink a large amount of water daily and definitely took that for granted until my first time in Africa. Story 34. Tight connections, cancellations, or long delays in a foreign country depend on the region of the world and the destinations you plan to visit. Story 35. It is hard to pin down one thing. Just getting there can be difficult with long plane or bus rides and crowded airports. Story 36. How ridiculously expensive you pay for internet. At home, I get unlimited data capped at 6 megabits per second for a whole month, and 6 gigabytes hotspot for only 30 ringgit, roughly 7 or 8 US dollars. Story 37. The taxi drivers. Wherever you go, they are always hustling. From taking down the signs to the bus station so you cannot find it, to taking a deliberately long route, to their meter always mysteriously not working. Everywhere you go, you have to be on high alert. It gets worse, though. I have had a lift lined up and had them threaten the person who was going to drive me into not doing so. I have also had their friends pretend to be police and close a road to stop me from getting to my hotel as part of a larger scam. I always avoid taxis whenever possible. Story 38. It may sound silly, but I hate packing the most. There are so many decisions to make in a short amount of time. It is very frustrating. Story 39. Traveling to less safe countries requires constant attention to your belongings. It can be very stressful if you come from a country where you can walk around with a phone in your hand both during the day and at night. Story 40. I was always really lucky while traveling. The worst and most intimidating thing for me was trying to seek healthcare for my husband and our kids on separate occasions when I do not speak their language fluently enough to explain properly what is wrong. Story 41. Middle East presents extreme wealth disparity, with people living in conditions close to slavery, reckless driving, and notable rudeness. The positive aspects include incredible politeness, interesting individuals, and a rich diversity of cultures. Spain offers challenges with parking, urban design, and bureaucracy. Avoid renting a car and using Airbnb. Remember to order a vermouth before lunch. The benefits are culture, climate, friendly people, food, and a relaxed pace of life. France can be challenging if you attempt to speak French poorly. The benefits are culture, food, and atmosphere. The United Kingdom has high costs and chaotic driving on narrow roads at speeds much faster than reasonable. The food is notable. Benefits include stunning beauty, London's dense array of attractions, and very interesting people. Northern India is marked by an overwhelming focus on money. Almost every conversation revolves around financial matters, which can be off-putting. The benefits include amazing sights. Southern India struggles with litter and driving issues. The benefits are wonderful people, fun experiences, and great food. Cambodia is rich in history. Vietnam presented the unusual experience of finding a child's tooth in a spring roll. The benefits are beyond description. Thailand is hot, and if you behave poorly, you will face consequences. They do not tolerate misconduct. If you are respectful, you will have a fantastic time. The food is exceptional. Australia has many spiders. In Jordan, buying gas can be difficult. Benefits include Petra, the Dead Sea, and very kind people. Turkey has issues with scammers and a culture of machismo. The benefits are numerous. Story 42. How complicated tourist visas are becoming. Visas on arrival are becoming a thing of the past, replaced with electronic visas to be completed 24 hours before flying. If you make a mistake, most of the time you cannot change it, and the check-in staff will give you trouble. Story 43. Waiting in airports. It was a long time ago, but we had a connection in Turkey and most of the airport was not air-conditioned. It was a nightmare. Also, a long time ago when I used to choose the lowest ticket, we waited for 18 hours at Kiev airport. We lost our minds. Story 44. The travel there is difficult. I can't sleep on the plane, and all other countries are so far away. It takes over 24 hours to get somewhere when you factor in layovers and needing to be at the airport early. It is awful and is putting me off traveling more. Story 45. Less so now with things like the euro, but ending up with a drawer full of random currencies. In small amounts, it is a nice souvenir, but I will over-budget and finish with more than I planned. I do not want to spend it on useless items at the airport when coming home. I always think, it is okay, I will use it when I go back to that country. But I never do. Story 46. Train stations are unpleasant. People often urinate in public areas, which is partially understandable because public restrooms are not common. I recommend wearing gloves when using public transportation. Story 47. 60 countries. Getting sick, jet lag, ultra long-haul flights. Coming home. Scary drives, looking at you, India. Taxi scams, looking at you, India. Pollution, again India plus China. Story 48. 1. Not flying in business class or first class on long-haul flights. Once you try it, it becomes very difficult to fly in economy class without a lie-flat bed. Jet lag. Scammers in developing countries trying to rob you while you do not know how to respond because you do not speak the language and do not want to get into trouble in a foreign country. Story 49. I believe the economy and currencies are important. It might be obvious, but I dislike having to say no to something because it was not in my initial plans and due to the high value of the dollar. As you can tell, I am not North American. Story 50. In no particular order. 1. The airport experience. Flying. Trying to find and book a good deal flight that works with your itinerary needs and does not have a 17-hour-long layover. Obviously, any medical issue, but stomach bugs are especially unpleasant. Local scams and frauds. Every place has its own. You have to learn them and stay vigilant. Losing your wallet, passport, or both. The Transportation Security Administration in particular. Crossing some borders via land. For instance, Thailand to Cambodia was a bit challenging. Getting wet when you are wearing cotton and do not have backup clothes handy. 10. Climate you are not used to, like a Canadian in Ho Chi Minh City in the summer. Story 51. Trying to figure out the best course of action while driving through no man's land in Malawi with a 106 degrees Fahrenheit fever. Despite having carefully followed every rule to avoid the usual tropical diseases, is a uniquely scary experience. Dealing with health emergencies and accidents is usually the worst. Story 52. 1. Customs, borders, and passports. Different electrical outlets and voltage. Mobile phone roaming. Traveling while experiencing severe traveler's diarrhea. Having to receive many vaccines or take preventive medications that most people do not need, such as yellow fever for Brazil, malaria for Africa and Central America, typhoid for Southeast Asia, and hepatitis B for Eastern Europe. I still have my yellow World Health Organization vaccination card from 25 years ago in the same folder as my passport. Story 53. I have lived in 5 different countries, and going to government offices to deal with bureaucratic matters in a language you do not understand is brutal without a translator. It is sincerely my personal conception of hell. Story 54. Every country has its own scams, so you should always check beforehand. If there are no ride-sharing applications and you have to use taxis, be cautious. If you visit multiple countries in one trip, try to keep track of currency conversion. The flight experience can also be affected depending on the passengers aboard, and sometimes you may get an outdated airplane. Story 55. Experiencing food poisoning, which I have been through several times, once resulted in hospitalization in rural China. I also had to stay overnight in a small airport where nothing was open. This happened in Turkey. I will not be doing that again. Story 56. I have been to 22 countries. Sometimes not being able to charge your phone easily to communicate with people or take pictures is frustrating. I experienced this problem once in Munich, for example. Few places there have outlets you can use. Story 57. Going through customs and having to unpack your bag looking for fruits, seeds, meat, grass, and other items is quite embarrassing. It feels awkward to close it up again in front of border security agents because they can see I have overpacked and am disorganized. Story 58. Depends on the country, but the water in some less developed countries can upset your stomach. It is unpleasant to spend most of your travel time with severe diarrhea. Story 59. Waiting at the airport when you are returning home is often longer than the flight to your destination. Since you are in a new place, you should plan to arrive at the airport even earlier to allow for any unforeseen delays. Story 60. Food poisoning has been the worst experience for me. It was a long and painful evening and night, with sweating, shaking from cold, vomiting everything, and fever. I probably should have gone to the hospital. Story 61. I have a warped spine, and some seats instantly cause me pain. 2 hours is bearable at best and brain-melting at worst. Long-haul flights of 6 hours or more make me want to open a door mid-flight. Story 62. Getting sick in a language you do not speak. Missing your bed like it is a person you once loved. Meaningless sex in cities you will never return to. Proving geography cannot save you from yourself. Learning that not all cultures are equal, including the one you left behind. Being poor while traveling, in my opinion, the worst crime you can commit. Global suffering, but make it scenic. Story 63. America has plenty of problems, but our plumbing is grade A. I am not sure why so many other countries do not use P-traps. Story 64. Having to come back to the United States. I love, with every fiber of my being internationally located. I feel sad every time I have to fly back, leaving what brings my soul so much peace and happiness. Story 65. Jet lag. It affects me strongly, and if there is a time change of more than 8 to 10 hours, it will take me 2 days to recover. Story 66. Jet lag absolutely wrecks me. It does not matter how much I prepare. I feel terrible for the first 48 hours of a trip. Food poisoning in Bangkok was quite nightmarish. Fortunately, that is the only time I have gotten sick like that while traveling. Story 67. My partner insists on being late all the time. I went to London by myself. It was so relaxing. I was very organized. Be early. Make life easier. Story 68. Food poisoning while traveling. Spent 2 days hugging the porcelain in Kyoto. Dealing with crying babies on long international flights. Having your luggage stolen. Story 69. Getting from the airport to my destination in a new country is never fun. It is a prime time to be overcharged. You do not know how long it should take, what a fair price is, or if you can negotiate. You have too much to do anything except accept your situation. Story 70. Probably just jet lag and long flights. Otherwise, I will take international travel over domestic any day. Story 71. Not knowing the language is acceptable occasionally, but when you are constantly struggling with a translator because you are not in one place long enough to learn the language, it becomes frustrating. The locals do not appreciate it either. Story 72. The flight. I love flying, but after a while, I definitely get really uncomfortable in those poor quality seats. I cannot sleep on the plane either because they are so uncomfortable, so inevitably, I lose a lot of the first days of my trips due to fatigue. Story 73. Mass tourism and globalization. I know many people love large holiday resorts, but this is my idea of hell. Traveling halfway across the globe to a country without exploring or trying to understand the culture. Being stuck at a hotel in Mexico or Turkey and not seeing more than the road on the journey from the airport. Endless buffets where quantity is more important than quality. Eating sushi and chips every day without trying the local cuisine. Story 74. Tour groups drain the energy from everything. Everywhere you go, you only get to stay half as long as you would like. Everywhere you eat is overpriced and catered to tourists. I understand that not everyone can plan an entire trip by themselves, but I feel that tours often defeat the purpose. I have definitely left at least one country thinking the tour ruined my impression of it. Story 75. Right after you have completed your 14-hour flight and landed, you have to get off the plane and go through customs. You are sweaty, sticky, tired, and jet-lagged. Then you have to wait in line to get through customs, wait for your luggage, and get to your hotel or where you are staying. That entire period of time is unpleasant. Story 76. Taxi drivers can sometimes scam, steal, rob, or overcharge passengers. Occasionally, you encounter good taxi drivers, such as those in China. Story 77. Just all the waiting around. A 3-hour flight requires getting to the airport at least 2 hours before. Then flights can be delayed, waiting to board the plane, once on the other side waiting to disembark, waiting for passport control, waiting for baggage, waiting for transport to the place you are staying, and so on. It makes even a short flight take most of the day. Still, it is worth it. Story 78. There honestly is no downside. Maybe, if I had to find fault for the sake of it, I would mention places like the Balkans, where there are many small countries, and you cross borders every other day, changing currency repeatedly, which can be maddening. But even that is going away now with contactless bank card payments. Story 79. United Airlines and many of their Star Alliance partners have seats designed for the average height of a man in 1837. Even when sitting all the way back in my seat and with the person in front not leaning back, my knees dig into the seat in front of me. Story 80. Cell phones that only work in certain countries. Airplanes are often too cold. I frequently request a blanket. There are differing rules for entering some countries, such as requiring an exit ticket even when the length of stay is uncertain. Transfers can be more difficult than necessary at some airports. Security measures have essentially told terrorists that they have succeeded by causing disruption and inconvenience for millions of travelers. Story 81. Not being able to afford better tickets, you have to fly on 3 different planes and take a train, sleeping on the airport floor literally. The whole trip takes 45 hours. I have done it twice. It is not enjoyable when it comes to sleeping or navigating in poor airports. Story 82. As an American followed by Chinese tourists, the entitlement among Americans is truly astounding. You are the one traveling. It is your responsibility to adapt, not the world's responsibility to accommodate you. From my experience, I have noticed that Chinese tourists primarily care about their group and behave as if their group is ultra VIP all the time. They do not consider how their actions impact others. Their group's experience is the priority. often at the expense of everyone and everything around them. Story 83. Layover flights. I hate customs as they are, but layovers that force you to go through multiple customs deserve a special place in hell. Story 84. Arriving at your destination at 8 a.m. and not being able to get into your hotel until 4 p.m. I have been pretty lucky most times when asking for early check-in, trying to use automated ticket machines that use a foreign alphabet. I once had to take the local train from Tokyo to Narita because I could not figure out how to get a ticket for the express train. It was not that bad but took more than an hour. Finding that the hotel had damaged my passport, with the corner of the main page torn off. Fortunately, I was flying home with Air Canada, and they agreed to let me board. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.